Chapter 2. Inside the Central Correctional Facility, the stark white walls loomed overhead, casting an unyielding glow over the bustling activity. Staff in immaculate white uniforms moved mechanically, while armed guards kept a watchful eye, herding a line of captured rebels with a mix of disdain and duty. General Hogan Bates, in his late 50s, a large man, scar across his right cheek, strolled casually down the corridor toward the front doors, where, at the front of the line of rebels, some guards had brought in a family they'd found camping in the woods somewhere around the facility. He was chewing gum so hard his jaw hurt, and he had no idea why he was still chewing it. Looking around, there was no garbage pail anywhere along the corridor, and because he can, he presses his gum into one of the women rebels' hair. He continues walking with his tablet close to his chest, eyeing the rebels as he passes, and being completely apathetic toward them. "All right, let's get this over with," he growled when he reached the end of the family. All eyes were on him. They wanted to know what he was going to do with the family. The family consisted of a father, mother, child, and grandmother. They stood huddled together, their faces marked with fear. A mother and child," Hogan said, looking at each, speaking with a cold, satisfied tone. "Perfect candidates for our little operation." He curled his upper lip. These days, it seemed all these rebels were starting to look alike. He held them all in contempt, just for being there. "Please," the mother said in a wobbly voice, "let us stay together. Please, I beg of you." Hogan froze where he was gazing at her in disbelief. That she had the audacity to even speak to him blew his mind. He wouldn't let his thoughts display on his face, though. He maintained the same stone expression before she baffled him with her arrogance. You! He pointed with his digital pen to two of the guards and tapped it in the direction of the mother and child. The guards came trotting over obediently. "You!" He tapped one of them on the chest with the pen. The guard didn't look away from his eyes. Hogan appreciated it when he got the respect he deserved and gave the guard a one-sided grin as a reward for his good behavior. "Take this woman to C-section." Hogan moved to the other guard. "And you, take the child to B. No." He held up his hand when the guard went to move. He turned slowly. The guards had taken hold of the woman and the little girl by their arms, ready to lead them away. Hogan wanted to prolong the agony for a little bit longer. He loved to drink it in and absorb the pain they emanated from their very souls. After all, other rebel prisoners who were standing in other lines were watching. He had a point to make. "Please," the woman was begging again. Hogan thought it was delicious. He wanted more begging. Now that someone had actually had the nerve to do it, he realized how much he liked it. It made his power seem even stronger. It made energy course through his body. "Please don't take her from me. Please." Hogan took the few steps between himself and the woman, moving so close they were almost touching nose to nose. "When you become as enlightened as I am, woman, you know that responding to the pleas of the one begging by affirming that need and granting that wish only leads to more begging and more pleading, in the hopes that mercy and grace will prevail. It is a sad day for you today. Accept it, and you will feel more peace." Hogan stepped away, turning abruptly to the second guard. "The woman goes to B. The child goes to E. Keep them as far apart from each other as you can." No, please! The woman's wailings traveled through the corridor. Hogan closed his eyes and listened, relishing in the woman's pain. While Hogan had been dealing with the woman and child, other guards had been restraining the father and grandmother, both of whom were quite animated, struggling against the hands that held them back, covered their mouths, and made their screams silent. It was amusing to watch the old woman in the wheelchair fighting against the guards who were on their feet and 40 years younger at the least. "You can't do this!" the father yelled. "You can't split us all apart like this! We are family!" He continued to resist, but his efforts were futile against the superior force of the guards. Hogan raised a hand, stopping the guards with a curt gesture. "We're not savages," he said, his tone almost mocking. "Keep these together." He glanced at the father, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. "You, strong and healthy, you'll make a fine addition to our seed program. Your future children will be honored to serve the kings." The father was led away, his desperate pleas echoing down the corridor. "I thought you were sending her with me! Mom! I love you, Mom!" "I was just kidding about that!" Hogan called out after him. "Sorry!" They might all look the same, but Hogan had to give it to them. Some were much more vocal than others. That represented a fearless nature that they could really use on their side. Hogan's attention shifted to the elderly grandmother who sat with vacant eyes in her wheelchair. "And the undesirable," Hogan mumbled. "Society's dead weight. Looks like those vaccines didn't quite do the job." He glanced upwards at the glass ceiling, tapping his pen thoughtfully. "The pit's crowded, but I suppose they can fit one more." A guard moved to take the grandmother's wheelchair, but Hogan waved him off dismissively. "Leave the chair. No need to waste good scrap metal." The grandmother was roughly pulled from her wheelchair, her protests blending with the general clamor of the facility. Hogan took a seat in the abandoned chair, making notes with detached amusement. He glanced up and watched as the two male guards who held the elderly woman ducked and dodged her flying arms and fists. They were small but powerful, Hogan thought, chuckling. "Oh, come now, boys. Surely you can restrain one little old woman." This is pathetic. In what Hogan could only classify as unnecessary roughness, one of the guards lifted the old woman off her feet and brought her down on her back with great force. "That's enough!" he yelled in her face. Trembling, the old woman looked up, saying in a breathless voice, "Lord, open their eyes. Let them see. Let him see. Let him reap what he sowed." "If your God cared so much, my dear," Hogan retorted with a smug grin, "he wouldn't have let you live so long. Maybe you're the one who needs to open your eyes." With a final condescending lift of his chin, Hogan gestured with his pen that they should take the woman away. He watched as the guards lifted her up from the ground and took her away screaming. Hogan didn't care for the sound. It reminded him of his own grandmother when she'd become an undesirable. It was their fate, so they should just accept it. Through a large glass window, he noticed a group of militia guards marching by, led by his son, Phoenix. He could practically hear the steady thump of their boots through the glass. He hurried down the corridor to the double metal doors that led outside. He pressed the long bar to open one of them and stepped out into the bright sunlight. Shielding his eyes from the sun, he called out to the marching men. "Boys!" Phoenix and his men all stopped at the same time, turned, and offered a sharp, precise salute. Hogan was especially proud of Phoenix. His son was brave and confident, everything he'd been at his son's age. He was determined that Phoenix carry on the family legacy, and he looked on the fast track for doing just that. Hogan puffed out his chest. He was proud, but he didn't let it overshadow protocol and professionalism. Phoenix turned to his men and told them to be at ease. Then he turned back to Hogan, remaining stiff until his father was directly in front of him. He could only relax then, though not completely. "Where's the hunt today?" Hogan asked, looking at Phoenix. He was taken aback when one of the guards answered instead. "Heading to a suspected terrorist penthouse downtown, sir. We've got a nest of vermin to clear out." "Careful. This one's got a thing for hats," Hogan warned, giving Phoenix a decisive glare. Phoenix winced slightly. "General, I thought you were headed for Jerusalem." "Bogged down for a few more days," Hogan responded, shrugging. "Even I have to answer to someone, but that'll change." Hogan looked down at his left knee with a small amount of hatred. It was because of that he was taken off the active duty he'd been on. "How's the knee?" Phoenix asked, genuine concern evident in his voice. Hogan was glad to hear it. "Turns out, vermin skulls are tougher than they look," Hogan said, clearing his throat. A few chuckles cut through the tension. "We'd better get going, sir." "General," Phoenix said. "Give 'em hell for your mother, Major," Hogan exclaimed, stepping over and slapping Phoenix on the shoulder with a hearty thud. "I know she'd be very proud of you. And don't forget dinner at Angelo's this Friday." Phoenix's team moves off while shaking Hogan's hand. "I'll be there. In fact, I'll be there this afternoon. They found Rebel's hub near Jerusalem. Going to check it out." Hogan's gaze returned to his tablet and notices an appointment reminder. Phoenix heads out.